Hello, and welcome to Right to Be Wrong, the show that revives the art of conversation, accommodating varied views on sports, culture, politics, world events, and every topic under the sun. After all, you have a right to be wrong. Here are your hosts, Dave and Tony.
Tone, we're back again, and I am going to talk to you about how to make babies.
Is this going to be a live, interactive session, Dave?
It is, but there's 101. If you and I do it, we won't be able to make babies.
What if
It will be fun.
What if I'm identifying myself as a woman tonight?
You can identify yourself as a woman, but reality is an undefeated champion. You still won't make a baby.
Isn't there a line somewhere in a Will Ferrell movie where he goes, "That's how you make babies"? I think it was
I don't think he says, and that's how, I think, and that's how babies are made.
Yeah.
So Sex Panther.
Yeah.
They
I do
60% of the time.
guaranteed
Works
to
every time.
Works every time. So, Dave, we are going to discuss declining birth rates, specifically in the Western world, and what that actually means. In Australia, it plays into the question of big Australia, whatever that is, the question of migration, and a whole lot of other things. So a bit of background: Australia's current birth rate is about 1.6 to 1.7. The replacement rate is 2.1.
It is. And for those that don't know why it's 2.1, it's because obviously people die early in accidents and illness and sickness. So you can't just have two babies to replace yourself and your husband's really, as Peter Costello would say, one for mum, one for dad, and one for the country.
That's right. So I think it's interesting, in the 60s, Australia's birth rate was 3.5. So it's down to 1.6, 1.7. So my opening comment would be, Dave,
why are people not rooting like rabbits?
Oh, there are probably some reasons for that.
That we'll go into.
But I've got a fundamental problem with governments stepping into any type of policy area that goes to go and have babies.
Well, you know, my starting position is I have an issue with big government and policy in general. I don't say that from the point of view of an anarchist, but I do agree with you. The trouble that we have is part of these declining birth rates are as a result of government intervention in a number of different policy areas. And it's kind of like you broke it, you fix it. Now the question becomes, do you trust them to fix it?
Well, because history will tell you, like when they've released policies in the past to fix, so specific policies targeted our population, like the baby bonus, when every man and their dog was going to Harvey Norman buying a Postway.
I'll say Jerry Harvey.
Right?
I loved it.
Harvey Norman, yeah.
Yeah, no, you're right, Harvey Norman.
Harvey Norman, yeah,
Jerry
right.
Harvey, the owner.
Used to be called Peter Harvey.
Peter Harvey.
That's right.
So that was a political analyst.
So
I think it's pronounced analyst.
Yeah, I think so. So that program or that policy initiative, I think, was a disaster. So I think governments need to get the right macro settings in place, and then as a result of those macro settings, what might drop out of that is an increase in the birth rate, right? But it's not specific targeted. We're going to pay people to have more babies. It should be
moving too far away there, Tony.
Sorry, it should be
mobile. Look at this.
It should be
Got mic'd up studios.
It should be macro policies around housing, infrastructure, affordability, all of that, which might slowly over time change people's view around, I only want to have one child. I want to have 3 kids in our family. Actually, I want to have kids earlier. And, you know what I mean? So but at the macro level, I think they need to implement policies that encourage an increase in the birth rate. Alternatively, if you want to increase the population, you go to migration, but that's too much of a hot topic. But then on top of all of that, I'm saying, why does our population have to grow?
Well, let's start by answering that question. My view is it doesn't.
I agree.
Right. So I wouldn't call our declining birth rate a problem because it's affecting growth. I'd say our declining birth rate is a problem because we're not maintaining stability at a sustainable level. And by sustainable, I'm not saying the size of this country can only sustain 27.5 million people. I'm saying the infrastructure we have in place, the job opportunities, the housing, that's what I mean by sustainable. So if someone made an argument to me to say, we're looking at a big Australia policy over the next 50 or 100 years to go from 27 million to, let's call it 60 million, and let's expand to 100. Now, there's a current policy in place from the Centre of Population out of Federal Treasury that's a 40 million target in 40 years, but hypothetically speaking, let's go bigger. I don't have an issue if that is in place and the infrastructure is going to be set in place prior to that growth, so we're not chasing our tail. But at present, the numbers we have, we know our infrastructure and our housing is simply not there. So from that point of view, no one has yet set out the reason for a concern on declining birth rates based on population growth rather than population maintenance. So that's the first one. I think there's two areas here that are causing declining birth rates. One is the macro that you've laid out. So that's in terms of policy and everything that falls under it. So that's, driving cost of living, people chasing, everyone seems to want a degree. Everyone wants to be able to start off in a house where their parents finished, all those sorts of things. So I think that's one side. The second side's narrative. So under the umbrella of narrative, I'd say there's a number of things, which is I don't want to have kids. I just want to live my life. And you know what? You're going to be a very sad old person, and you're going to hit a point in time where you're going to need some support. And I think it's ironic that you will rely on support from other people's children to look after you in old age, but won't have your own and contribute. With the exception that I know there are people in society, the outliers in the data, that are not wired that way. They're not paternal, they're not maternal. And I don't want to force them to have kids, because if you're going to go and cure cancer or be entrepreneurial and create the internet type stuff, I don't want to preclude those people from doing it. But we do need to address part of the narrative that we have a generation coming through that think life is about how many countries you get to, the designer clothes you wear, the restaurants you go out to, and that having children is somehow going to destroy this utopian life that you could set up for yourself. So I think we need to, as we move through this conversation, I think we need to discuss those two areas that are causing it.
But Dave, in terms of that utopia you speak about, the genie's out of the bottle. Yeah, like we've created that environment where the hyper-consumerism, people want the best of everything yesterday. There's no understanding about sacrifice in order to achieve. Start small, grow, go bigger, grow again, go bigger. Again, that's generational change. I don't see how we fix that, right? Because
I think you just answered it yourself. Like you're correct. I think it is the genie's out of the bottle for a generation, but it's not out of the bottle in perpetuity.
Fair enough. Yep.
Yeah, and we can fix it with the next generation coming through. So, and by that, when I say fix it, again, I don't want to put things in place that compel people to live a life the way in which I think, or a majority of people in a democracy think. What I want are the facts and a system that allows for people to make a healthy decision, that we don't end up impacting those that do want to have 3 or 4 kids. And I think that's the problem, right? So I don't think the issue is the 5 to 10% of people that really don't want family, because those people existed 30 years ago, 50 years ago, whatever. I think it's really more around those that do, and fixing the system that allows them to do it earlier and to go further as far as 3 kids, 4 kids rather than 2, by addressing all those things around cost of living and expectation and so on and so forth.
That's a big piece of work, Dave.
It's huge, but one of the first problems, and people don't want to face this, but it's a fact. Women are hypergamous. So what that means is they marry across and up in social status. So on average, that means a woman that has a bachelor's degree won't marry a tradesman, right? And I don't want, we're going to girls hate me. Oh, I know some my sister's got a PhD and her husband's a plumber. Don't give me a single data point. We know on average that's just a fact. So if we're pushing 56%, currently 56% of higher education places are taken by women. So we've already created a mismatch there, a problem there. So I'm not saying don't educate women. What I'm saying is, as part of the conversation we had in our Fixing the Higher Education episode, do we need to push every girl into higher education just because there's a degree there to do it? Because there's a lot they're getting caught up in sociology and arts and humanities that have value. I have one of those degrees. But do we really need to have so many people at university rather than have them out doing other things, which means it's not that as they get more educated, they're not going to be tied to the kitchen and doing the dishes. That's not what I mean. What it means is you've now lumped them with debt. They've got to finish those degrees, so they're pushing the opportunities out to meet people and start families. And because they start getting bachelors rather than having a diploma in whatever it is they want to do or getting a trade themselves, then you've got less issue around that social status that's biologically inherent in decision making.
That's a tough one, Dave. I think when we start stepping into taking away individual choice, I get a bit nervous. Right?
Well, sometimes we have to, right? Because we don't turn around and go, it's your choice. It's your choice to shoot up heroin in between classes at school. It's your choice to shoot up heroin in between classes at uni. It's your choice to shoot up heroin, then go operate that big machinery in the mining, right? We step in because we know that there are some individual choices that the impact societally, so it's not just the individual, are such that we have to, even though we know that what we're doing is we're starting to encroach on someone else's freedoms, so to speak.
Yeah, because we're imposing rules on people around when they start studying, if they start studying, when they start working, the type of job they could be doing.
We do this all the time.
In terms of
what time do your boys have to be at school?
9 o'clock, whatever.
Is it flexible? Can they do what they want?
No.
Can they wear the clothes they want?
I think, Dave.
Can they stay the subjects they want?
But I don't,
how fast did you drive here today?
But I don't.
Do you see what I'm getting at? The whole society is that way.
I don't think it's right to say. I don't think it's right to say to implement a policy or to implement incentives that sound like we want a certain cohort to not go to uni, all right, and do other jobs.
But that's what they're doing.
Because it's going. But
they're doing it now. The government says we're going to give extra money for apprentices. We're going to give fee-free TAFE. Why are they doing that?
Yeah, but
they're incentivizing you to stop going to uni to go into fill the skills gap. We do this all the time.
Yeah, but I just don't like the idea. So I actually think that's a good policy because it will lead to an outcome over time. But the way it's framed in terms of women, we need less women at university. Like that's
no. I didn't say we need less women at university. My position is overall we need less people.
Yeah, I agree.
And what it happens to be is there's a disproportionate amount of women at university. So it's not to target women. It's that if we target fixing the waste at university, it happens to be that it will actually, one variable within this problem, it'll start to address. Yeah. Now, one of the things I've said, because I actually recorded this episode with Gary, but I haven't released it because I want to actually redo it and do it with you. But one of the suggestions for me was, because again, I don't want a situation where I'm saying, or the perception becomes, no uni for you, go and have babies. So one of the things for me is that, well, to start with, I think with some rare exceptions individually and in discipline, I think 18's too young to be going off to uni anyway. And by that, not because I don't think you're capable of the study. I think you're probably better off having another year or two and thinking about what it is you really want to study. But if we did something to the effect of everyone can go to uni at, let's call it 18. Everyone can go to uni at 18. Everyone incurs a HECS debt. It's your individual choice what you want to pursue on the basis that you meet entry requirements to the discipline. Let's say we turn around and say, if you're a woman that's over, let's call it 30, any woman over 30 that has 2 kids or more, if you decide then you want to go to university, with the exception of masters that you're just trying to climb the ladder, you want upskill or change careers, your university is free and you get 100% childcare. So what you're effectively saying is then a woman at 18 might say, no, I'll go travel Europe for a year. I'm happy to work in cafes. I'll do whatever, some other sort of job. Because if I do it now, I'm not precluded, but I don't want to rack up the $60,000 debt. That incentive sounds good to me to delay doing this because I'd like to go and fall in love. I'd like to start family early. And what then happens is, because here's the issue. Let's play this out. A woman that goes to uni at 18, graduates 21, 22, depending on the discipline. Later, if we're talking about medicine and the like, let's call it 5 years into her working life. She's 27, 28. What starts happening, right? Baby time. So now she's got to make a choice, a trade-off. Oh, I'm just getting enough experience, 5 to 7 years, that I could be jumping into a management role, a leadership role. If I have kids, it takes that time out. It holds me back, right? If a woman turns around and let's arbitrarily say it was 28, not 30, and she goes, my boys, the youngest one, or my kids, the youngest one is 4, the oldest one is 7. By the time I graduate, it's going to be 7 and 10. By the time I get 5 years experience in, they're going to be 15 and 13. I'm not having to stop my career progression. I just keep going. I don't have a HECS debt, and I'm not forced to make this choice of family or work. So when I say incentivize, as I say, I don't want to start hammering and taking things away. But a policy like that, for example, it then becomes a choice. But if you turn around and go, oh, I'm still paying my HECS debt at 35, catching up with your friends, and someone says, I've got no HECS debt because I did the other, that was your choice.
Yeah.
But what it is, because that's what the problem's getting to, right? The problem's timing and cost.
Yep. As
the two main things. Now, there's all sorts of other housing policy we've got to address and so on and so forth. But this is one of the things. And we can't, again, it's very easy to say, oh, I don't want to tell women what to do. I don't want to tell women what to do. I don't want to tell men what to do. But we've also got to be adult and grow up and realize that a birth rate at 1.7 means in 2 or 3 generations, notwithstanding migration, there is no Australia. That's it. That's how fast you can wipe out an entire civilization by not having kids. And then the other thing that would frustrate me as a taxpayer, as I said, would to see these people that said, I'm not going to have kids. We fly around the world business class. We travel now at 60, 70, 80, 90 years of age. You're complaining about the lack of medical care. You're complaining about the lack of taxes in to provide services. And it's like, well, what did you contribute? I know people go, oh, I contributed my taxes. That's part of it. There's money, but then you need human capital. So you weren't prepared to create children that they don't necessarily have to be directly the nurse to you, but it's like, well, what's your child doing that's contributing to our community that helps us all when we need it? Because, okay, you're young at the moment, you don't need it. And that's the realities of what's going to occur.
Yeah, so we're asking this next generation to make some different choices that's going to drive a better outcome when it comes to birth rates, yeah?
Sure. With effectively.
With policy around it, right? If I was of this generation, I'd be going, why are we making the sacrifice? Wait. I'd be going, why don't these fucking boomers, right, who've lived off the biggest property splurge in the last 30 years, sitting on all this fucking money, getting tax breaks on super, why don't they fucking chip in?
Well, we'll start with, as I said to you, I think boomers cop a lot of shit, right? Because a lot of those boomers are migrants themselves.
Yeah,
a large proportion.
I'm just playing devil's advocate.
No, yeah. I know. But that's why the whole idea of the podcast is not to sit here and agree, or it'd be boring as batshit. There'd be no ideas driven through. But everyone keeps going to the boomers. I'm like, I laid it out for you with yourself, and actually I'll personify it, because even my grandparents, right? I had grandfathers that fought in the Second World War, Australian Infantry Forces. And when they came back from the war, they had, one of them had like a half-acre lot in Bankstown, and now it's all like townhouse stuff. So you're telling a guy that fought for the country, that had 9 kids in a 3-bedroom home and chickens in the backyard, a water tank, grew his own vegetables, that he didn't make the policy decision that when he went to war, Australia was 7 million people. He didn't make it between that point in his life and just before his death to grow the country another 20 million people. Other people did it, and then you turn around and people say, well, he's rich, he's sitting on this land, look how much money. And, at the age where you're over it, you don't need it, it's time for you to sell up and move and go find somewhere else. Like, this thing of just going at the boomers, we've got to stop. There's genuine stuff there that, like the NIMBYism, where you say, I live on the North Shore, and if you're going to do high rise, just do that in Western Sydney. There's genuine issues that you've got 3 million plus in a super fund, and we've probably been too generous in some of the benefits, but they're a very small percentage of boomers. Most boomers really aren't rich. And if you look at how many kids boomers had, and some of the things, they did their bit, right? So we've got to be very careful between what are the outcomes of individual and collective choices of the generations before us, and how much of it is simply circumstance that, someone got rich off. Like my brother's a good example, right? I remember, I'll give you a story. My brother and his wife, when they were looking to buy a place, they wanted some space because the concept was they knew they wanted to have more kids. They had 4 kids. They wanted to have kids so the girls could ride horses, the boys could ride motorbikes. They bought acreage in Marsden Park in Western Sydney. And my old man was talking to me. He was going nuts. He's going, they've paid so much money, blah, blah, blah. It was $180,000 for 2.5, 3 acres, whatever it is. The developers want it now. Right, so he's a policeman. He was driving a truck at the time. Worked his ass off for 10 years before he gets in the cops. Then protects the community. His wife does 30 odd years. They lived somewhere no one wanted to be. Everyone, what you living out there for? It's so far out there now that it's worth millions. So what do? Do we tell him he's rich? Do we say, you've got so much? You must, hang on, you could have bought out there for nothing too. And you didn't. You didn't want to be out there. So this stuff around property and what people are worth, it's really a very false way to look at it. Now, there are some things that the boomers have benefited from, and then they're kind of shutting the gate or opening the gate, depending. So, for example, one of my criticisms would be, why did you start such a big migration program when we didn't have the infrastructure? And when you saw it starting to drive up house prices at too fast a rate that was beyond wages, why didn't you put the handbrake on? Why'd you vote for governments that still allow this? That's a genuine criticism. Part of the things around infrastructure. So as well, not just the housing and the migration. You knew, because you've seen before what's happening, that we don't have enough. The roads aren't wide enough. There's not enough dams. There's not enough electricity. Again, why didn't you push for those things to happen? So there are some things that when they were in charge, and by in charge, that boomers were the politicians, boomers were the captains of industry, the largest voting bloc. So those are genuine criticisms, but there are others that there's too much as if the world was utopian before the boomers, and it was this one absolute amazing generation, and then they just turned around and
no, it's not like that at all. It's not like that at all.
So it's it's something that if we keep going down that path and just blame it, we're not going to fix anything. Because there is some truth in some things, but what we need to do is we need to stop. Well, firstly, the narrative needs to be kids don't ruin your life. Right?
Yeah, I get it.
That's the first thing. So we need to tell people yes, it can be costly in terms of time and money, but the upside to it significantly outweighs the downside on an individual level before we talk collectively. And then we do need to say, fair enough, we've got situations where people are getting, buying properties at 9, 10x income. So we need to do 2 things. We need to address the side of the increase in price that's beyond reasonable. And we need to say, well, why are wages not going anywhere? And we know one of the big reasons of that is, we've got to stop this migration. But, I don't know how true this is. I'm waiting for confirmation on this one. Allegedly, so far, the sources it's come from are reliable. Those people reckon the person that was the source of the information in India is a credible politician, but I'm still waiting for, 100% confirmation. But the rumor is that this government's gone to India they're coming up with a plan to get 1 million Indians to come and build houses here for Indians to migrate here.
No, sorry, build 1 million homes.
So, well, let's run with that.
Yeah.
Why do we need Indians to come over and build 1 million homes here? This is the madness, and this is why I talk. Stop putting a kid in university in a Bachelor of Gender Studies, and
I get it.
They come out like Reagan.
But what I'm saying is, I don't think, in the same way that young people growing up pre-World War I this whole national pride and wanting to go to war, get on a ship, go to the other side of the world to fight for the empire. That generation, that's what they wanted, right? We've gone through different generations. The current generation and every generation since then increasingly has become a little bit more selfish, right?
Oh, far more so.
And the ability for them to comprehend and say, I'm going to make a sacrifice and do something positive for the country does not extend beyond, I'm working, I'm paying taxes, and I'm raising my 2 kids as best I can.
Actually, I would suggest that anyone that's doing those 3 things are not our target market for the conversation.
Okay.
With the exception that you're 0.1 below. But I don't necessarily think that's a problem, right? Some of that stuff too around World War I of going off and fighting for the country, a lot of those people too, it was an adventure.
That's what I mean. But
because they couldn't get on a plane and just fly off to Bali for a bucks weekend.
That's what I'm saying. So now we're in a generation now, Dave,
that have it too good.
Gap years. No, I'm taking a year off. I'm going to go live in the UK. Yeah. I'll worry about that later. No, I can stay at home till I'm 29.
Correct. So whose fault's that?
Oh, that's ours.
That's right.
Like
right? This is where we're into a Generation X issue.
Yeah.
Because we saw what started happening get too soft, and then we've magnified it. And we have it across the board, right? We don't want the cane or the strap in school. We put people before the courts that have spat in the policeman's face and told them to fuck off, and we think, oh, whatever, deal with it, copper. It's like, you took away discipline, you took away pride, you took away respect. We bought them everything. We get people now that don't even want their kids to have part-time jobs through school. I say, no, focus to get 99.9 in your HSC and you can work later. And so this is us. We're now into a Gen X problem here. And mind you, I get it because my little man didn't answer his phone the other day when he missed the bus. He does the right thing. He rings his mum, says, I've missed the bus. I'm going to my friend's place. He doesn't message her to say, because his friend lives down the road, he doesn't message her to say, I'm here now. Can you get Dad to pick me up on the way through? He just assumes he said he's going there, so he hasn't done that. So she calls, as mums do. Did you get there safe? Not answering. She's calling his friend's mum. For whatever reason, she's not answering. Mum starts to panic, right?
Yep.
So for me, when I go and pick him up, give him a talking to. I say, right, here's your punishment. I said, you're not in trouble for missing the bus. I said, because that bus is really tight. We know that. And the second bus, it's 20 minutes later, it didn't come. It's not your fault. I've had that with public transport. It happens. I said, you're not in any trouble if that happens. I said, it's fine. You rang Mum. You did good. I said, you didn't tell her then you got to Decky's place. He's like, I thought I didn't have to. I said, but I'll accept that. That's fine. But you've got a mobile phone. You're not answering. Mum's freaking out. Someone's grabbed you. You've been hit by a car, whatever, right? So I say, here's your punishment. You can't, no games for the next 2 nights, right? That's it. No gaming. What happened after day 1? Oh, it's good to see you made your bed. You did the right thing. You're being polite today. You can play games tonight. Right? So for me, I'm already cutting the punishment in half because I'm like, I feel bad. Yeah, no gaming.
You're soft.
Too soft. I should have stuck with it. Should have said, no, the punishment was 2 nights.
You're taking him outside and beating the shit out of him with a belt. Belt buckle.
And then followed up with a baseball bat with nails in it.
That's right.
So
I'll give you crying.
That's exactly. So I don't want to return to the days of what we got, right? Because my brother and I joke about how the cordless jug was invented by someone from our generation. It used to get hit with the jug cord. So if you invent a cordless one, someone's dad can't unplug it and belt you with it. I don't want to return to that. He's a great kid, and he's actually never done anything you'd say he even needs to be hit. But I turned around and, weakened within, 24 hours on his punishment.
Yeah.
So what's it going to teach? So I'm not throwing stones at everyone else. I'm part of this problem too.
Yeah.
But we need to get back to something, or there will be no generations moving forward because people are going to have 1 kid, no kids. And then they'll all be complaining that, the national language of Australia is Mandarin because you had to import everybody, or it's Hindi.
Yeah, I get it. So, Dave, we've spoken a lot around Australia and the current situation and then some of the things we can do, but this is like an international problem, right? So I'd note that France and Singapore actually have got direct cash payments.
All direct. All developed economies have the same through line because we've all done the same things.
Yeah.
Right? It's the same narrative.
Yep.
We've all told women, go and get yourself PhDs. We've let narratives proliferate that, you don't need no man. We've let narratives for couples, go live your life. It's the same problem everywhere. And there won't be a Western developed society in the current trajectory. I think the worst is Japan. I think they're 1.2 or something.
Yep.
In their birth rate.
But even China's like sub twos.
Yeah, I think they're 1 point. Actually, I don't even think they're 1 point because they had the one-child policy for so long that even though it's been gone for 20 years, it was so ingrained that people aren't turning around and suddenly having 2 or 3 kids. Now, mind you, if ever there was a society that could afford to lose 50% of its population, still be huge, it's China. But yeah, what is happening? People are forgetting why the best parts of life is actually, teaching your kids how to ride a bike or going to the beach with them or watching them play sport.
But there's been a lot, Dave, even in the US around Western civilization effectively going to God because of numbers.
Yep.
Right. And then being taken over through migration. Right. And there's some far right stuff you can see that's, pretty heated in terms of the UK and what's going on there.
There's some far right stuff, but it's not all far right, and it's truth. Let's look at the migration patterns, right? Is there a large migration pattern of everyone racing into Algeria, of racing into Morocco, of racing into Saudi Arabia, of racing into China? Like, that's another narrative that's so false. I'm not saying Western civilization is perfect.
Yeah.
But I tell you what, the data's pretty clear. Migration only seems to run one way. And if things are so terrible in these cesspit shitholes that are Australia, the US, the UK, for the life of me, I can't work out why anyone would risk their life to go through 10 countries and then a boat to get to this cesspit of a shithole. Because the reality is they're not. So, but if we and what's also happening in the UK, which is a big one, if you look at it, where are the women and children? The migrant boats are always full of men of what they call military fighting age. That part, I think that's where it's a little bit far right, because there's kind of like and I could be wrong, there's kind of like an implied thing that what we're going to do is build it up so much that then we start the war and we've already got our army there. But I don't think that's the case. I think they're just economic migrants. They're not genuine migrants. They're guys that see that we get a roof over our head, 3 square a day, a free mobile phone, cash payments. So, I mean, what country genuinely should accept that as its migration policy? That's insane.
No, no. So
they've got 1.5 million migrants on benefits.
Who? The UK?
1.5 million.
I saw Farage was in the US today.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think he's an absolute shoo-in. I still maintain my position that Keir Starmer won't see out his term. I can see Labor desperately trying to get rid of him and try and move themselves more to the right, which makes them more to the centre, not more actually right. But that's the direction I can see them trying to save themselves. But I think it's too late. I think once you're seeing people in the country, the average person that's generally apathetic to politics. You and I have had this conversation before. You and I could speak about like a 5-day test and someone else lasts 5 minutes. When you've got the average person, they've had enough. They want the damn flag up. You saw yesterday that the Irish writer comedian was arrested for tweets while he was in the US. Just jokes he put up. And he was met by 5 armed police as he arrived at Heathrow Airport. The UK is arresting 30 people a day for social media posts. And by social media posts, I'm not talking about Sieg Heil, Deutschland über alles. I'm not talking about the return of the Third Reich or the new Fourth Reich.
Yeah.
I'm talking about people saying, I don't want my tax dollars used this way. Oh, you're inciting violence and that's racism, off to prison for you. It's insane. It's absolutely insane.
I know. So, Dave, what about some of the other, like, if I take some counter positions, right? So I actually think it's an individual choice.
100%.
You want to have more kids? You want to have 6? Fine, have 6. You want to have 12? You want to have half a kid? Have half a kid.
But just on that point, that's the point, right? If you set the conditions up, the women that have none, the women that have 1, there'll be women out there with 5, 6, 7, 8 that make up.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. So,
but the conditions are
that's right, at the macro level. And we know that typically history, the data points tell us that anything the government does in terms of financial incentives is ineffective, right? Largely,
yes.
Right. So if we get back to what problem are we trying to solve with the birth rate as opposed to the size of the population? Okay.
Well,
Because-
the
because-
first thing is maintain, not
No,
grow.
but Dave, are we trying to maintain and grow the birth rate?
We're trying to grow the birth rate to maintain the population and decrease the age of the workforce so there's enough taxation going into the coffers to maintain the services we currently need and the expansion that we plan.
Yeah, okay. So what I'm saying is,
Actually, I sounded like I knew what I was talking about by laying that out
yeah,
clearly there.
so when people get panicking, oh shit, the population needs to keep on growing because we need the tax base to drive all these services that we need to deliver. Then for me, that opens the door in terms of a discussion. Okay, what services are we delivering? Where is the value?
Actually, you know,
because at
50%,
the moment, my concern is, Dave, in the US, for example, they just keep on lifting the debt ceiling. And like their debt's now at 150%. Their interest bill
is over $1 trillion.
You know what I mean? So
That's insane.
I don't want to get to that point. I want Australia to make
Correct.
more fiscally responsible decisions to say we are going to take a hard look at the NDIS.
Correct. The National
It
Disability
makes no
Insurance
sense
scam.
that 20%, I think it's 20%, 1 in 5 kids under 12 have got ADHD or I'm just thinking also. So we look at the choices that we make. We look at some of the tax breaks that we give in different areas. We look across the whole gambit and say we now need to cut our cloth, right? The fact is, we could be 27.5 million for the next 5 years.
You know, 50% of Australians receive a government payment. They rely on the government for their living, and that includes, mind you, to be clear, that number includes if you're an NDIS provider, but it means you're relying upon 100% government payment for you to be the provider, so it includes that. It's not pure welfare, but that's insane. Because what you're saying is 1 in 2 people relies on the other person to contribute enough tax for you to take out.
I know. So
That's unsustainable.
Yeah, I agree. So my concern, Dave, is we keep on telling ourselves we need to maintain and grow the population because we're going to have this aging population that needs to get looked after. And I'm thinking to myself, run it like a business. I'm not saying it has to make money, but only spend what you have when you need to. At certain times in the cycle, you can go and borrow money and lift your government debt. But then when times are good, you pay some of that back. But we just can't keep on dipping in and saying, we're a government, we can just print money anytime. They literally can just print money anytime they like, right? And kick the can down the road. I actually think that is that is generational irresponsibility.
Well, that leads to a whole nother episode, which is should we return to a gold standard so that they can't do that?
Are we going to float the Greek drachma?
So the drachma should have been floated about 12 years ago, Tone. But if we return just as a short little tangential.
A weave.
We're just weaving, Tony. We'll come back to the story. It's just a weave. It's a little weave, but we'll come back. So the gold standard, the concept was that you could only print into circulation the equivalent of what you had gold back. So if you had $1 billion in gold, you could have $1 billion in circulation. The value of the gold rose and it was now worth 1.1, or you'd mined another 0.1 worth of gold, you could print another $100 million into circulation. The reason Nixon closed the gold window and took them off the gold standard, it meant it became fiat. You could just print it, and that piece of paper is only worth something because the government says it's worth something, and we have enough faith in our government to believe the value of the 20, the 50, the 100 is printed on that paper or in Australian in plastic.
Yep.
So that's one issue in terms of a whole long conversation, and people have far more expertise in it than I. But would a return to the gold standard curtail politicians that just keep making promises with our money and then machine goes click? But on your point of the aging population, the why I hate that argument, even though it's genuine, the argument should be we've got an aging population. We need to encourage and increase our organic families, our birth rate. Your population's always going to age. You and I are now 40 minutes older and a little bit dumber from when we started the conversation, right? So populations are always aging.
Anytime I spend with you, Dave, there's actually a 2-to-1 proportional impact.
Yeah.
So I spend 20 minutes with you, I'm actually 40 minutes dumber.
Yeah. I'd believe it.
It's called the Lodge effect.
It's what is it? Billy Madison, when he talks about the Industrial Revolution, he has no idea. He says everyone in this room is dumber for having listened to that. I award you no points. But we're always going to have an aging population. So to me, the answer isn't bring in migrants, because you know what happens if you turn around. Because I hear people say this all the time. Oh, there's nothing wrong with migrants. I know that. The right migrants the right way. But here's something that even if 100% of Australia said, we want more migrants and we want you to bring in 1 million a year. Well, where are the houses?
Yeah.
We already don't have enough for now. Your pipelines and your sewers are only to the amount of people already live in the area. So you're going to need to build more dams, more power stations. Your roads aren't wide enough. How many people on the buses? It's not as simple as just bringing in more people. Where here's the thing. If you bring in, let's say they say, we want to bring in more skilled tradespeople to address our housing shortage.
Yeah.
Some of it I agree with if it's from the right area and they're properly skilled and they're properly vetted and they're actually quality tradesmen. But you don't want to rely on all migration, because as soon as you bring in a family of 4, guess what they need?
What's that?
A house.
I get it.
If you turn around and your 2 boys, and I'm not saying they have to be, but for an argument, your 2 boys are getting to an age in the next 3-4 years, they could leave school.
Yep.
And they take on apprenticeships to be tradesmen. Guess what they don't need?
What's that?
A house.
Yeah.
Because they're living with you.
That's right.
So we produce 2 more tradesmen for no extra house required.
Yeah, I get it.
Right? So this concept of just bringing things from the outside comes with a whole bunch of other issues and other problems anyway. So one of the things I think one of the biggest wins we could have would simply be that life was more affordable. Now, part of that gets to we've had the episode of energy security is national security. Again, this is one of the problems, because even once you magically buy the house,
yep,
you still got to run it. You've still got to buy your food. You still have all these other costs. And energy, the one thing that if you get wrong that runs through every single thing, from the price of someone's apple to the price of their haircut to turning the light on to the goods that they import before they sell, the one thing that runs through everything is energy. So you have to get that right to drive things down. Now, on your point where you said government financial incentives never work, you're right. They always distort, and then you get wrought and so on and so forth. But one thing I thought was the biggest mistake when we go back to in the Australian context was the baby bonus, that I think it was $4,000 if you have a child, and that's what led to people going to Harvey Norman and buying plasma screen TVs at the time. I don't want to see handouts for having kids. I want tax breaks. So what that means is to get it, you have to be earning it. And the more kids you get, more kids you have, the more tax breaks you get. So, for example, let's say as a couple, I was going to say married, but you don't have to be married, but you're a couple.
Yep.
And the first child, what you'll get is you'll get 10% tax deduction across the highest income, either combined income up to, say, $100,000 a year as an arbitrary number for this conversation.
Yep.
Or the highest income in the family. So if you happen to have, you can have combined up to 100, or you can have, if someone's making 150 a year and someone else is making 40 working part-time, it'll be applied to the largest income, so that 150.
Okay. Then
your second child, there's another 10%. And once you have 3 children, 30%. And what we do is if you have 4, within a certain time frame, so there's not big gaps, certain ages, same as we do for family payment,
go on,
that you will not pay tax until the youngest child is 18. So what we're really incentivizing there is we're saying you get it when you're working and contributing. The more money you make, the more incentive you get. So I'd encourage you to take on overtime or try and get the promotion.
Yep.
And the money that you're getting, everyone goes, oh, well, they're not going to get any tax. Well, I can tell you, a family of 4, if you think you've just put $30,000 a year back in their pocket, they're going to stuff it under the mattress, you're insane, because they'll buy the bigger house. They'll replace the car. They'll go on a holiday. They'll eat out. So it'll drive the money through the economy that you're going to get the tax through the GST and the consumption and the other income taxes that'll be paid to the people working in those things anyway. So what you're then doing is it's not this handout that then you're saying, well, it doesn't matter if you're the single mum on your 17th child, in Mount Druitt. I've just alienated everyone in Mount Druitt and Sydney. We're going to get hate mail too. But you're not incentivizing the wrong type of birth rate. You're incentivizing family. You're incentivizing to stay together, because the other thing is if you separate, there'll be implications, because the way it is you had to be a couple and it was generated on these things. Suddenly, if you separate, no worries, not compelled to stay, but some of your benefits will be reduced. So what you're trying to do is encourage the right type of family, keep the family together, encourage people to work harder and more, because they're going to get bigger tax breaks, and then they're going to spend it on their kids anyway, so you're still going to get the tax. Now, it's a spitball idea, but it's much better than a $4,000 baby bonus.
Why don't we just increase migration, Dave?
Definitely not just increase migration.
No, what I'm saying is...
No, I know what you mean, because we already...
We need more people in jobs. We need them to be paying taxes.
Because the trouble is, everyone in this country, except people in regions, everyone in Australia knows that the infrastructure in every major city currently cannot handle the number we have, and that we've got years ahead of us of road widening, rail line building, airport building, dam building, school building. We've got all this stuff, house building. We've got so many things already that we're behind, and we should have a moratorium on our permanent migration, and even our temporary migration, until such time as we are ahead of the curve. Now, you talk about boomers with property. There's one way. Let's take the view that you disagree with everything I said and you think every boomer farts and gold falls out of their ass. Fuck them. They can pay for everything. You want to screw them? Curtail migration. Wait until what happens is too many houses in the market for sale. Their property value is not just going to keep going up. In fact, it'll decline. What's your property worth? If there's 10 people that need to rent and there's 5 houses, rent goes up.
Yeah.
If there's 10 people to buy and there's 5 houses, property goes up. What do you think happens when there's 10 buyers and there's 20 properties? There's 10 buyers, there's 10 renters, and there's 20 properties for rent. So if you have a real hate, and you think I'm wrong, you have a hate for baby boomers, curtail migration, increase supply, reduce demand. And the only way, by the way, increasing supply in this situation won't work, because we've already been through, we don't have enough tradesmen. The bureaucracy and red tape takes too long. So you're not going to fill this gap by just trying to ramp up supply. This has to be a demand-side cut. And that demand-side cut, and there was a report from the Housing Industry Association directly to the centre of population that showed if they just decrease migration by 15% over the next 5 years, there'd be a surplus in housing.
Yeah.
So that in and of itself would start to do things. Because I look at, like, there's granny flats around where I am, and they're like $700 a week for a granny flat. Now, I know people today sort of come out of uni or tradesmen making good money. I know things are better, but wow, that's an insane amount of rent for someone to have to come up with. And then they've got to try and save to try and buy a house to get stable to then go, honey, do you want to make babies?
I get it.
So we're in a giant mess.
Yeah, I think the issue of migration, like, we could make that decision now, right? But irrespective of what decision we make on migration, we're still going to have to address, if we want to address the birth rate and encourage more babies, right?
Migration is just one variable.
Yeah, I know.
There's about 20.
Yeah, but that birth rate process, you can plan for that from an infrastructure perspective. I think you're better positioned to get ahead of that.
Yes.
Because you implement policies, you know when the when the rubber's going to start hitting the road, so you know where the suburbs are going to be, and the average age of children there's 2. So in 3 years they're going to need a school, and the population's growing, they're going to need you can get ahead of that.
Correct.
Whereas when you just drop in 200,000-300,000, right? 200,000-300,000, like, it's instantaneous demand for services, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's a good way to end it, Dave. Again, I've had my Monday night education session for Mr. Lodge.
Only you had it on a Thursday this week.
Oh, geez, it is too.
So you're still recovering.
I don't know.
What's going on? Some of our episodes I was dying, some episodes you're dying. Are we just incubating diseases and sharing us amongst each other?
I think we are.
Yeah. Maybe we got to stop making out after each episode.
Can you give us a Donny?
The Mauritian Queen's going to be very upset. So she's supposed to come home and make out with me. You're making out with Tony after the
Mauritian Queen, just understand, as soon as this episode is finished, Dave and I are going to try and make babies.
You're going to get it on.
And we'll be it'll be on our OnlyFans page.
Some Barry White. Actually, I heard a very funny joke the other day.
Go on.
Said, what's white supremacists' favorite porn site?
Go on.
Only Clans.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
So that's a good joke.
Yeah.
You don't hear when you've been barbering as long as me. You don't hear too many new ones. But I thought that wasn't too bad at all.
What do we say, Dave?
Well, Tony, as you know, you have a right to be wrong. Thanks for listening, everybody.
Thanks, Donnie.
Make Australia great again.
See ya.
Thank you for listening to this episode, and we hope you enjoyed it. Like us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. Please leave us a review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify.